everybody, Svetan Patak, happy Friday. I am Sarah of Expat in Croatia, and this is 5 Question Friday. Every Friday at 5 o'clock Croatia time, I answer 5 questions from people who have sent them in from Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, expatinCroatia.com, my consulting sessions, email, and people who stick them to my forehead. So today I've got 5 questions, but today is a special edition because we're only going to talk about Schengen. Croatia is entering the Schengen zone on Sunday, and we have gotten a flurry of questions over the last 3 months of people panicking about this. So we wanted to take one episode, our last episode of 2022, to focus just on Schengen. So I've got 5 questions that are actually kind of an amalgamation of a lot of the questions that we've gotten, so that way we can kind of cover all the different aspects. I'm also going to give you kind of an overview of Schengen as well. And then if you have any questions during this episode, you can drop them in the comments there, and then I'll answer them for you live. So before we dive into Schengen, hey, how's it going? So happy you're here. How are you? How was your Christmas? Mine was lovely. I was very, very lazy, and I enjoyed it immensely. So we are on holidays right now. We just finished our first week of holidays. Expat in Croatia has been closed for a week. We have 1 more week off. So if you've contacted us by email or through the website, we're on vacation. But we'll get back to you whenever we get back from our holidays. I gotta say, I'm in mourning right now because we only have the Croatian kuna for like 1 more day. And it's so sad. I'm gonna miss the kuna immensely. It's such a big part of the culture, and I just, it's part of Croatia to me. And so I went and deposited the last of my kuna into my bank account today, but I saved 1 of each bill so I can put them and frame them on the wall because they're about to be gone, and we're gonna have the euro. It's such a big year for Croatia. Croatia's entering Schengen on January 1st. They're changing to the euro on January 1st. Croatia just got bronze in the World Cup. Like, a lot of things are happening. And it's a very exciting time to be here. So yeah, I'm very sad about the kuna. Are you sad about the kuna? Because I feel like I need to hold a wake or something. What else? New Year's is coming up. My least favorite holiday of the year. I don't know. I don't like starting a new year hungover. So what I am going to be doing is I'm going to watch fireworks in my bathrobe that are usually set off from the playground here in my neighborhood. Tortsita always sets them off every year from the elementary school that's just near my building. So I will sit on a bench in my bathrobe and I will watch fireworks, and I'm very excited about it. Oh, what else? Yeah, I think that's it. So now we can dive into Schengen. Are you ready? Prepare yourself. All right. So this is 5 Question Friday. If you're just joining us, I'm Sarah of Expat in Croatia, and I'm now going to answer questions about Croatia entering the Schengen zone on January 1st. First, what is Schengen? So in Europe, you have 3 different zones. You have the European Union, you have the Schengen zone, and you have the European Economic Area. So different countries are part of different things. You have the European Union, which is, I believe, 52 countries. Then you have the Schengen zone, which is what we're going to talk about today. That is 26 countries, 22 from the European Union, plus Iceland, Norway, Liechtenstein, and Switzerland. And then you have the European Economic Area, which is the European Union plus those 4 countries that I mentioned. And each one means different things. But like I said, we're only talking about Schengen today. So what is Schengen? Schengen is a joint territory of those 26 countries that function as one state with regards to its border controls. So to give you an example, it's kind of like America. Like if you're going from Texas to Arkansas, or from New Jersey to New York, or in Canada, if you were going from Ontario to Saskatchewan or something. It's no different. It functions as one borderless territory, Schengen. So that means that when Croatia enters Schengen on Sunday, that there will be no borders between Croatia and other Schengen nations. So the borders between Croatia and Slovenia and the borders between Croatia and Hungary, like the land borders, those will go down. The maritime borders between Croatia and Italy, those will go down. The airport borders between Croatia and other nations, those will go down, although that will happen a bit later. That will happen in March. So if we talk about this in more simplistic terms, up until this point, if you wanted to leave Croatia by land, you would drive up to the border and you'd have to go through a border check. You'd have to show your passport or your ID or whatever, and then you'd cross over the border. That will not happen now. So you can drive freely into Slovenia or Hungary and then beyond, into the beyond, without any kind of border check. And if you're going to take the boat, for example, from Split to, or anywhere on the Croatian coast to Italy, you will no longer go through a border check. And if you fly through the air, you will no longer go through a border check. That's essentially what will happen. Now, the other part of this that is important to take into consideration is in each of the countries, you can only be in those countries for 90 days in a 180-day period. There was also this additional rule for the Schengen zone, or is an additional rule for the Schengen zone, that you can only be in the Schengen zone for 90 days in a 180-day period. So there are people who would go and stay 90 days in the Schengen zone, and then they would come to Croatia and stay 90 days, and then they go back to the Schengen zone for 90 days. Now Croatia is going to be in Schengen, so that is not going to apply anymore. So that's something else to take into consideration. So there's 3 other pieces to this. One is the Schengen Information System, SIS. That is where all the countries, and now including Croatia, are going to share information on lost or missing people, wanted people, and people who are banned, as well as lost and stolen property. So all that information is going to be shared via SIS. Then there's VIS, the Visa Information System. That's where all the Schengen members share their information on people who have visas to enter the territory. So that's going to happen. Then there's this last piece, which is ETIAS. ETIAS is a new system that's going to be implemented by the end of 2023. This is for people who can travel to Europe visa-free. So if you can travel to Europe visa-free and you don't have a residence permit in Europe, then you will have to register and get approved through the ETIAS system before you can enter Europe. So we don't want to focus on that right now. It's not implemented yet, but that is something that's part of this kind of broader change, and that will happen later in the year. But I wanted to make sure that I went ahead and covered that. So it looks like we have our first question. I'm recently working in Croatia, but I'm from Nepal. My question is, can I work in a different Schengen country? Yes. I mean, you have to have a work and residence permit for that country. A work and residence permit for Croatia is not going to give you permission to work and live in another country within the Schengen zone. That each country regulates their own work permits. So there's not like a master work permit that's just for the Schengen zone. That's a great question. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to dive into the questions now. Now, I said this a bit earlier. We've gotten a lot of questions. So what I tried to do is kind of boil them down into 5 questions that cover kind of the different the most common concerns that we've gotten. So first, if I spent the last quarter of 2022 in Croatia, can I restart my 90 days immediately on January 1st and have 2 90-day stays back to back once it enters Schengen? No, you may not. So the Schengen zone has a rule of 90 days in a 180-day period. Croatia has a 90-day and 180-day period. You don't get 90 from Schengen and 90 from Croatia. You only get 90 and 180 days. Each is calculated the same. It's from points of entry. So you can't do 2 back to back. The system's not going to work that way. So this person in particular, they have 90 days in Croatia and 180 days. So that means on January 1st, if that's when their 90 days in Croatia ends, they have to leave Croatia, period. That's a great question. So thank you so much. All right, next. If I have a temporary residence permit in Croatia after the Schengen transition, can I travel to a Schengen country as a tourist after it expires? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. So your time in a Schengen country on a residence permit does not count towards your time as a tourist in a Schengen country. Those two things are different. So you have two scenarios here. One, you're on a temporary residence permit in Croatia. It expires. You wish to travel to Schengen after. The other is you have a residence permit in Croatia during Schengen, but you want to go on vacation to France or the Netherlands or Belgium or Italy. So you have 90 days and a 180-day period as a non-resident in other parts of the Schengen zone. Okay, so third, once Croatia becomes part of Schengen, how much time will we have before the rules kick in? Will there be a grace period? No. Well, yes and no. But in terms of calculation of days spent in Schengen, January 1, hard stop. So there is no grace period. There's no, when I got these questions from people, they were asking like, well, can I fudge a little bit? Like, can I be here a little bit longer? No. There are a lot of people who are coming down to the wire here, and they've exhausted their time and they want to spend more time in Croatia after this change. But no, it's full stop. January 1st, your Schengen calculation starts. So it's important to understand that. Now, in terms of the phases, there are 4 different pieces of this that get implemented. So on January 1, so Sunday, the border controls on Croatian land and maritime will be abolished. Those are over. On Sunday, the restrictions related to the Schengen information system will be abolished. So that means that system goes in place. Croatia starts sharing information with the rest of the Schengen members and vice versa. On March 26th, 2023, the border controls in airports will be abolished. So that means if you want to fly between Croatia and France, you will be able to fly there just like you're flying on a domestic flight. So it would be no different flying from Split to Paris than it would be to fly from Split to Osijek. It would be the same. And then the last is ETIAS, which will launch by the end of 2023. Looks like we have another question from Taylor Bracey. Hey, Taylor. Do your tourism days in Schengen stop being counted once you submit a temporary residence application? Excellent question, and yes. Well, yes and no. So you have your Schengen time and you have your Croatia time. Now it's the same rule, 90 and 180-day period, but they are looked at differently. So when you submit a temporary residence application in Croatia, your tourist stay no longer matters. So your clock stops in terms of Croatia time. Your Schengen time continues to go. So you won't continue to accrue days in Schengen because you're no longer a tourist. But let's say that your application has been submitted here in Croatia, so your tourist time in Croatia has stopped. But during that waiting period, you decide you want to go to Italy. Well, then you're going to start accruing more days because Italy is Schengen, if that makes sense. So you have these two clocks, and while they're exactly the same, you have to make sure that you calculate all your days. And there are lots of Schengen calculators out there, so I would make it your best friend if you travel a lot, because you never want to get right down to the wire, especially if you travel a lot. Like, there are a lot of people who are like professional travelers and they keep an Excel sheet to track all of their days, because sometimes the border patrols, they will not have the same calculations as you. And I've seen some people get turned around in borders because they're a couple days off from whatever the government sees you as having. So Taylor, let me know if that was not clear, and I'll be happy to make a clarification. Thank you for that question. Okay. Next, I need a visa to enter Croatia. How will Schengen affect me? Excellent question. Really, it's not going to. There's no measurable impact in terms of obtaining a visa to enter Croatia. You're still going to obtain a visa in the exact same way that you would have before. The only difference is really on the back end, this visa information system that I mentioned that is going to be kind of a database of everyone who has visas, and Croatia and the other members share all of that joint information. So if you have a visa for Croatia, it will be shared with the rest of Schengen. Now, even though Croatia is not in Schengen now and has not been up to this point, Schengen visas were valid in Croatia. Croatia recognized Schengen visa. So that's why there's not going to be a substantial change to people in that situation. Okay, next, this is my last one. I think this is the last question. Okay, so if you want any other questions on Schengen, drop them in the comments now. All right, so I must stay in Croatia a certain amount of time to maintain my residence permit. How will Croatia know if I'm gone longer if all I do is travel to other parts of the Schengen zone? This is an excellent question, and I was chatting with our lawyer last night about it. So, depending on the type of residence permit you have in Croatia, there's a specific amount of time that you must reside in Croatia to maintain that permit. Some people have to be here 6 months, some have to be here 9 months, some have to be here 11 months. It all depends on your specific permit and the purpose on which it is based. Now, up until this point, up until Sunday, it was pretty easy for them to track, to see how long you were in the country, because you always had to go through a border check. But now there will be no borders between Croatia and 25 other countries, which means you could, in theory, get a residence permit in Croatia and then go to the Netherlands for 6 months, and it would be pretty hard for Croatia to know that you did that you were gone all that time. And I think that we're going to have to see exactly how this plays out to see what kind of challenge it is for Croatia to to update my software. It's perfect timing, Android. Thank you. So yeah, it's going to be a bit challenging for people to regulate those stays. Now, as a reminder, don't test Croatia on this. And I say this because I feel like, generally speaking, the people who come to me and are a bit frustrated by how long they have to stay in Croatia to maintain their residence might also be the same people who would get pissed off at Croatia if Croatia catches them in being gone from Croatia for more time. So if you decide that you want to get residence in Croatia, but then be gone from Croatia and other parts of Schengen for longer than you were supposed to be, do not get upset if Croatia catches you and they cancel your residence permit, because rules are rules. It's going to be very hard for them to track people, but you never know what information they're going to have. If you, for example, you get registered with the government in France as a tourist, you know, and you end up being there too long, and there are ways that you could be tracked, but we don't know the extent, civilians don't know the extent of what Croatia will know and what they won't know. If you want to see how long you are supposed to be in Croatia on residence, send us a DM and we'll be happy to send you our post on that. Looks like we have a comment from Kathy. Hi, Kathy. If I own property in Rijeka and leave at the end of temporary residence, if I go to Italy for 90 days, do I have to wait another 90 days before I can return? So you have residence based on owning property. It expires. You go to Italy, which is Schengen, for 90 days, and then you come back to Croatia. You cannot. You'd have to wait another 90 days because Croatia's Schengen now. And that's something I think people need to understand is, I usually recommend that when people are coming to apply for residence in Croatia, that ones that can travel visa-free, that they come to Croatia, wait 2.5 months, so they spend most of their tourist stay in Croatia, then they apply for residence towards the end of their tourist stay, because that allows them to maximize their time in Croatia. But a lot of those people are coming from Schengen, so they spend 90 days in some other Schengen country, then they come to Croatia, spend another 2.5 months, then apply for residence and their tourist stay stops. That is no longer an option. So there is this lovely name for people who do stuff like that, and that's Schengen hoppers. So Schengen hoppers, or Schengen hopping, I should say, is when you spend 90 days in Schengen and then you spend 90 days outside of Schengen and then you go back to Schengen. So that allows you to stay in Europe for an entire year. Year after year after year. You never have residence. You're always a tourist no matter where you go. But you do 90 days in Schengen, you do 90 days out of Schengen. And Croatia was a really, like a gem for Schengen hoppers because it's a wonderful country. And people could spend 90 days out in Schengen and then come to Croatia for 90 days, then go back to Schengen. And that's no longer an option. It's all the same thing. So that's one of the reasons a lot of people are freaking out. All right, we have another question. Can an American purchase a home without being a citizen or resident of Croatia? Absolutely. Absolutely. Depends on your nationality, and if you're American or Canadian, it depends on your province or state. So Croatia, to buy property in Croatia, your country or your state needs to have a reciprocity agreement with Croatia. That means Croatian citizens can buy property in your home, and citizens of your country, state, or province can buy property in Croatia. So we have a list of all those reciprocity agreements. If you'd like it, send us a DM. We'd be happy to send it to you. But that's what it's based on. You do not have to live in Croatia. You do not have to be a citizen of Croatia. You just have to make sure that your nationality, state, province matches the reciprocity agreements that are in place. And if they do match that, then that means you have to get permission from the Ministry of Justice to buy property in Croatia. That is a process I went through. So, for example, when I went to buy my apartment, the one I am currently sitting in, Croatia has a reciprocity agreement with Texas. Texas is my last place of residence in the United States, so I was allowed to buy property. So once I finalized all the details with the seller, that contract and all my information had to go to the Ministry of Justice, and then they took 2 months and they looked over everything and they approved it, and then I got permission. And then once I got permission, the sale was finalized, and then I was able to get added to the land registry as an owner. So great question. Send us a DM if you'd like to see the list of reciprocity agreements. Okay, guys, that's it. If there are no other questions about Schengen, we will go. I will draw this out a little bit more in case you have any other questions. But yeah, so Sunday, January 1st, Croatia's in the Schengen zone. Croatia will be on the Euro. You will be able to continue to spend kuna for 2 more weeks, and you can continue to exchange kuna and deposit kuna until I think the end of June? Yeah, the end of June. We have a post all about the Euro, or 2 posts about the Euro. One for just like regular old people, and then the other one is specifically for businesses and all the things they are obligated to do. And then we also have a guide on Schengen. So if you need any of that, send us a DM and we'll be happy to send that directly to you. So this new Schengen thing, in terms of how I feel about it, I'm jazzed. I don't spend a lot of time outside Croatia, so I'm not super concerned about how much time I can spend in the rest of Europe. That's never been a concern of mine, but I am pleased about not having to sit at the border. I went to a friend's birthday in Slovenia this summer, and I sat at the border with Slovenia for like an hour, which is actually not long during summer, because when I was coming back into Croatia, the line was 4 hours long to get into Slovenia. And that won't happen anymore, and that's pretty neat. So yeah, now I'm kind of like rolling in my head, okay, what kind of crazy road trip can I take? So yeah, I'm jazzed about Schengen. Euro, not so much. Euro, I'm not jazzed about. It's completely beyond my control, and I have met very few people in Croatia who are actually happy about the Euro. Most don't want it, and I'm in that bucket. I am no economist. I will not claim to be. But I just think it's a big part of the culture, honestly, and I like bills rather than having to carry like a bucket of change with me everywhere, which I feel like is going to happen now with the Euro, and I don't know. So I'm trying to be very careful with my money and my spending this week so I can make sure that I get rid of everything in time without having a lot of extra kuna floating around. But yeah, that's it. That's it, guys. Oh, thank you. I will try and enjoy the rest of my break. So that's it. This is our last episode of the year. I will be back next week for our first episode of 2023. I can hardly believe it. But it's happening, guys. It's happening. I was just getting used to 2022, but 2023 is officially here. I wish you all a very happy new year. Sretna Nove Godina. And yeah, I'll see you in the next year. Thanks so much for being here. Bye. Vidimose. Ciao.